My name is Josh Fisher, and I'm doing my speech about the history of prisons and jails. The main reason for prisons and jails were to keep criminals and those who don't abide by the law off the streets. After hearing my speech, you will be informed on why jails were created. Jails and prisons have been around for many years, but you may not have known that jails and prisons were also used as mental institutions. Now, everyone knows why jails and prisons were created. Everyone has the idea that they were created to keep bad guys and criminals out of the streets. And you're right. Jails and prisons were created to keep the murderers and robbers out of the streets around us good people. Now, according to Terry Evans and Anna M. Tinsley from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Texas prisons population has dropped to its lowest in 5 years, but the decline hasn't been as steep as in some other states, most notably California. As a result, Texas now has the largest prison population in the nation, surpassing California for the dubious distinction. The prison system has been around since the 1600s, and it was invented in England. According to Harry Elmer Barnes, the prison system was used to detain men against their will. The Poor Law of 1601 in England assigned responsibility for the poor to parishes. These parishes built workhouses to employ their poor on a profitable basis. This turned out to be a difficult thing to accomplish. During the 18th century, workhouses generated into mixed receptacles where every type of person was dumped. As time moved on, conditions in these workhouses were very harsh and degrading in order to discourage the poor from relying on parish relief. The conditions in these workhouses were improved in the later 19th century. By the first half of the 20th century, self-welfare services and the Social Security. Debtors' prison was a place where they took people who could not pay their taxes and rent. A debtor's prison could also be a small jailhouse resembling a small house or shed. This would be a place for debtors and their families to stay in for a short sentence. Normally, if a debtor had a family, then they would accompany him in prison. These places were commonly workhouses where they would make potato sacks, baskets, and other mass product items. In the early 1860s, prisons were reformed. In some prisons, the cooking was excellent, far better than in most ordinary prisons. Food is not only the area where English convicts seem to be far better than non-convicts. The convicts got exercise, had regular eating habits, sufficient feeding, were healthier than the average population, and didn't have to worry about keeping a job. It seemed more adventurous for an Englishman to commit a crime, thereby be convicted to prison where he could obtain better food, baths, and good warm lodging, than if he were struggling out on the streets of London. In today's prison, they range from minimum security prisons, juvenile halls, to maximum security prisons and mental institutions. According to Prisons 101, the most organized as well as most famous prison system is that of the United States. However, most prisons in the U.S. are facing the threat of overcrowding. According to Prisons 101, by the end of 1988, the number of convicted criminals reached a total in excess of 628,000, the largest amount ever to be incarcerated. In fact, the Don Jail of Toronto, Ontario, was threatened by overcrowding not too long ago, thus causing prisons riots. Each state is very different from every other state in terms of sentencing and even what acts are crimes. States have different schemes for dividing up crimes by severity, and these categories might have similar names across the states, but different practical effects. For example, a second-degree felony in Florida is a category of crime punishable by up to 15 years in prison, while a second-degree felony in Texas is a category of crime punishable up to 20 years in prison. The general purpose of these schemes is to produce fair sentencing within a jurisdiction. However, since views about the correct approach to criminal justice vary from state to state, these statutory schemes vary enormously. I hope at the end of this speech you have been informed on how prisons were started and the transformation it has made since the 1860s to the 21st century. Have a nice day.